Carlos Ramirez, owner of MBS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey and Daytona, Florida. So our friends over at American Bass sent us over a bunch of speakers and amplifiers that they've built for motorcycles. The amplifiers are the VFL Audio series, and the speakers, they have the Falcon series and the Rider series. So the first part of the video is going to be concentrating on just the amplifiers. The VFL amplifiers are available in a Rebel 900.4, Rebel 1400.4, Rebel 2400.4, Rebel 3000.1, Rebel 5000.1, and a Rebel 8000.1. So before we get into the amp dyno videos, all the amplifiers did above rated power. They're a bit larger than I would like, but you'll see in the install videos that we're able to make them fit in the fairing of 14 through 23 Harley and the fairing of 24 and up Harley. We're able to do the 4 channels in the front, and the mono blocks we're able to do in the tour pack. We had 0 issues during the install. Some of the fitment was tricky on some of the speakers, but I'll let you know at the end of the speaker videos which ones fit, which ones didn't fit, which ones are geared more towards custom installation, which ones are drop and fit for riders. But solid amplifiers, clean looking, nothing really fancy about them. They're workhorses. I beat them up during testing. I really drove them hard. I tested them at 40 hertz. I also tested them at 1000 hertz. And they handled it like a pro. There's a lot of really good amplifiers coming out as technology evolves. This is a perfect example. So let me go over some of the amplifiers, what they look like, then we'll shoot over the amp dyno video. Then at the end, we'll have a video of them playing on the bike. So American Bass has thrown their hat in the ring in motorcycle audio. This is the VFL series. This is the Rebel 2400. So this is the most powerful 4-channel of the line. The input and output stage look very similar to the Moto series by DB Drive. Let's see if the performance is similar. This amplifier says it'll give us just over 400 watts per channel into 4 ohms, just over 600 watts per channel into 2 ohms, and then it's telling us 1200 by 2 bridged. Let's see what we got. All right, we're at 4 ohms, 4 ohms stereo. Just 1 channel hooked up. Let's see if we get the 400 watts they promised. And there it is. $426 watts, certified. They promised 425 and delivered 426, so they're being honest. I like it. Let's see if we can get the 640 at 2 ohms, and let's see if we can get the 1290 bridged. All right, we're at 2 ohms, 1 channel. $697, it hit it. Nice job. All right, let's rewire it to bridge and try it at 4 ohms. 4 ohms, bridge. Let's see what we got. $1227. Just shy of the 1290 that they promised. Let's run it one more time. Yep. 1220, 1230 is the most we're getting out of it. So it promised us 2400 watts RMS, face value. And we're at 2480. So good job. Okay, next up is the VFL Rebel 900.4. So this amplifier is claiming an RMS power of 150 by 4 at 4 ohms, 220 by 4 at 2 ohms, and bridged 440 by 2. Like the build quality of the amplifier. Only complaint I have, I feel it's a little bit too tall, and I feel this edge on both sides might give us a problem fitting in the fairing, but we'll see if I'm right, because we're going to take it over to a bike after we're done running it through the amp dyno. So let's see if we can get it to do its rated power. So there's our 150 at 4 ohms. So this is the second amplifier I'm testing from them, and I see they went straight with certified RMS power, because what we're testing is dead on with what the manual says. So they're claiming 150, we got 151. So they didn't overrate their amplifiers, but they rated it certified 1% distortion. I like that. Let's switch it over to 2 ohms. We're looking for 220 watts, and we got 245 at 2 ohms. Now let's bridge it. Okay, we're hoping for 440 watts bridge into a 4 ohm load. $446 watts. Great job. Next up is the Rebel 1400.4. So 1404 is rated at 220 by 4, 355 by 4 into 2 ohms, and 700 by 2 into 4 ohms. Let's see what we got. Okay, let's see if this Rebel 1400.4 will give us the 220 watts it promised into a single 4 ohm load. So we'll reset the dyno. And go for it. Ooh, looks like we fell just short. Let's run that back. So we're looking for 220 watts. Hmm, 208. Close. Hopefully it does better at 2 ohms. 2 ohms, it's promising 355. Let's see if we can get it. Ooh, just short. 315. All right, now let's rewire it for bridged. 4 ohms bridged. $609. Just shy of the 700 watts they promised us. Okay, next up is the Rebel 3000. There's already a couple of things I see on this amplifier that I like. It has 0 gauge inputs for a 3000 watt amp. Most full range amplifiers that are 3000 watts only have 4 gauge inputs. This has 0 gauge inputs. The reason that's important to me is 0 gauge wire flows 300 amps of current. A 3000 watt amp at full tilt will draw damn near 300 amps of current. So don't have to use adapters. You can go straight 0 gauge into the amp. I like that. Same thing on the output side. 4 gauge speaker terminals. The reason I like that, 3000 watts requires 12 to 8 gauge speaker wire. So if you're running dual voice coil and then you're running 8 gauge up from both sides of the saddlebags, you can put in a 4 gauge furrow and go directly into the amp. You don't have to downsize the wire. So that's important to me. I like that. You don't have to use adapters. So it'll take 4 gauge speaker wire in. I would have rather see them do 4 8 gauge terminals instead of 2 4 gauge terminals, but you gotta take what you can get. At least they upsized it, but I like that. So if it had 4 4 gauge terminals, then you could just run, if it had 4 8 gauge terminals, then you could just run 8 gauge from one saddlebag, 8 gauge from another saddlebag. But what you have to do is get 8 gauge from one saddlebag, 8 gauge from the other saddlebag, tie them together, and there's plenty of room in the 4 gauge holes. This amp is promising us 3000 watts into 1 ohm, 1900 watts into 2 ohms. We're only going to test the 2 ohm and the 1 ohm. See what it does at 2 ohms first. There's the 1900 watts it promised at 2 ohms. Let's see what our 1 ohm numbers look like. It's 700 watts. Just shy of the 3000 mark. I believe it's because we're using 4 gauge wire. Let me go ahead and upgrade the wire and run it again. I'm actually glad that happened for you guys that don't believe that you need 0 gauge wire to hit 3000 watts. So I tried to cheat it because it's a short run. I said, let me try it with 4 gauge, and physically couldn't do it. So as you can see, I doubled up the wire. So now we're gonna be able to get full current to the amp, and now it should be able to do full power. We got 2867. Okay, I made myself some 0 gauge test wires, so this amp will finally be happy and we can run the test again. Okay, so we have our 0 gauge feeds. Let's see what we can produce. There we go, 3200 watts. Amazing when you give the amplifier the cable it wants. So I'm actually glad that happened. I tried to take a shortcut just to make these videos quicker because I still got a pile of amplifiers to test here. But we always use oxygen-free copper wire. We always use the wire rated for the amount of current that the amplifier can pull to do full tilt. Most of these full range 3000 watt amplifiers only have a 4 gauge input. To get complete output out of them, we'll use 4 gauge to 0 gauge adapters and we'll run 0 gauge wire. This amplifier actually came with the 0 gauge opening, and then I didn't want to run back to the workshop and cut and crimp inside of the connection, so I just tried to run the test since it's a short run, like a lot of people say you can get away with, and obviously we couldn't get away with it. The amplifier wanted to draw 300 amps of current. It needed 0 gauge wire to do it. You see that we lost like 800 watts, 900 watts from not doing the 0 gauge cable. We did the 0 gauge cable, ran the exact same test. Amplifier did overrated power, did 3,200 watts. That's how important it is. Now that we have the proper cable, I want to rerun the 2 ohm test and see what we get out of it at 2 ohms. We're going to run the test back at 2 ohms now that we have the proper cabling. $1,956. So it beats our advertised rating of 1,905. Good job. We are now testing the VFL Rebel 5000.1. It promises 5,000 at 1 ohm and 3,400 at 2 ohms. Let's see what we got. So we're going for 3,400 watts. Okay, 2,400 is the most we're able to get. Let's see what we get at 1 ohm. Okay, we fell short. I know why we fell short. I'm only running 2 batteries, so the amplifier is trying to pull more current than the batteries can supply. That's why it makes me laugh when I see a bike with 1 battery or not running lithium batteries thinking they can run 10,000 watts RMS. All right, let's get some more batteries hooked up and test it again. All right, let's see. Still short. Okay, so I ended up rerunning the test, but I didn't get a chance to film it because I was trying to get it done. So we had 3 batteries hooked up. I wasn't thinking that a 5,000 watt amp draws over 300 amps of current, and I only had 0 gauge wire running to the amp. So I used these adapters. So these are 00 to 0 gauge inputs. So I was able to run 00, so 2 0 gauge wires into the adapter and then into the single 0 gauge hole. So it gave us 600 amps of current going into the amplifier from the bank of 3 batteries. Then I got the 5000.1 to do 5,100 watts at 1 ohm, and I got the 8000.1 to do 8,050 watts at 1 ohm. I know I could have gotten the 8,000 to do more, but I would have had to order 000 adapters. But the amplifiers did full rated power. If you guys want to see a dedicated video of that, just message me or leave me a comment on the video, and then that'll be a completely separate video where I'll measure some of the biggest motorcycle audio amplifiers, because it's going to take a lot of 0 gauge wire, it's going to take a lot of batteries, and it's going to take a few different adapters. But for the sake of this video, all the amplifiers did rated power. Everything on the spec sheet was confirmed, and that's it. Let's continue on.
jealousy.